Hey everybody, got to talk about pistols coming up. This is a video, it could be used anytime we have pistols. A question was asked on the Facebook group, do we have a progression we want to use? And the answer is no, we don't really have a progression, because progressions are, for the most part, dependent on who we're dealing with, how much time we have, what other movements we have in a class, and we sort of have to pick and choose which progressions we use at what time. That being said, you should use a progression to build this movement up. I'm just not telling you what that progression should be. And anytime we're building progression, you need to think about it this way, like what's the most fundamental expression of the movement? That's one end of the spectrum. The full movement is on the other end of the spectrum, so the unadulterated, pure version of whatever we're going for is the other end of the spectrum. And usually try to think about 2 or 3 stops along the way. So what could 2 or 3 good logical stops be to sort of seamlessly build incrementally up to that pure version at the end of the spectrum? And what we allow people to do, a really great progression allows people to sort of self-regulate. First stop, everybody feels good, good. They can self-regulate and they can take on the second stop. And a few people say, hey, you know what, this feels like a good option for me, and they peel off. They get off the highway and that's where they're gonna be. A few people move on to the next one. And that's the way you should be thinking about your progression with a pistol. The problem with a pistol is that, again, because we've got varying athletes in the room with backgrounds and experience levels, because we don't know necessarily what the pistol comes with in the other movements in the workout, we have to pick and choose on a given day. So what I'm gonna do in this video is give you a bunch of options for a pistol. So first of all, if you don't know what a pistol is, not having warmed up at all, a pistol looks like this. Should I go this way or that way?
Either way.
All right, so we're gonna get up on one foot, we're gonna lower ourselves down, we're gonna get all the way to the bottom of a single leg squat with the heel off the ground, and then we're gonna stand back tall. And that's what a pistol looks like. That's what we're going for, both legs. Requires not just a lot of mobility, a good deal of strength, and a good deal of balance, right? So usually it has more to do with balance than anything else. People will fall backward because their ankle mobility isn't where it needs to be, and that's what makes people struggle with a pistol. So let's start building up a bunch of options here. Number one, an air squat. All right, that is the fundamental expression of a pistol, right? You take it all the way down to a double leg traditional air squat. If we have people that have no business doing pistols, don't be afraid to just have them do squats. We move on to a lunge, which is very similar to an air squat, but it does start to activate the single leg movement, right? So it allows one leg to do its own work while the other leg is somewhat passive, and we swap out, and each leg is responsible for doing equal amounts of work. A lateral lunge, okay? So yeah, we're just pulling movements that you've already seen. These are actually good scaling options for a pistol. So with a lateral lunge, we step out, and you can see that I'm really starting to load up heavily into this leg before I step back. It just allows me to keep the off leg on the ground, really gives me some balance. It's not quite as demanding on my control and on my single leg as a pistol is. But again, this is a good option for you to have up your sleeve. This is a fun one. We're gonna go ahead and get down into a lunge, and we're gonna peel the back foot up off the ground, and we're gonna lean into the front leg and stand, all right? So again, I drop down into a lunge step. All I'm doing here is I'm taking my toe off the ground, I lean into that front leg, and I stand. That's a great option for people who wanna start to practice developing the strength on a pistol. Now, that's almost all strength and has no development on the balance and coordination of a pistol. It's just loading up and standing, which is only half the battle. We need to develop the skill of balancing ourselves in that position too. We can do something a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more skill oriented. And this is basically when we do a single leg squat, we're gonna touch the off knee to the ground right by our foot. So we would come down, touch that leg, and stand back tall. That's another great option. And unlike the previous one where I started in the bottom, it has a little bit more of like a balance component to it. I have to control myself on the way down. You can see I've got a low box here. Another cool one that you can do, also mostly for strength. Sit down on the low box, take your foot off the ground, lean into one leg, and stand back tall. Stand back tall. Again, that's more for strength, and it's less for balance, less for coordination. Just something you can keep up your sleeve as an option. A box pistol. So sometimes the issue people have is as they descend, the foot being up in front, that's actually the hard part. And so if we elevate ourselves to the top of a box, we can actually allow that off foot just to kind of sink down toward the floor, and I don't have to worry about lifting this left leg up in front of me, and I can do a pistol off a box, and I've essentially just brought the ground up. I've given myself clearance on the off leg. That's a great option as well. We can start from the bottom, which is another option off the box. So we can load up down at the bottom, lift this leg up off the ground, and stand from there. That's a really, really good option. It's just another twist on what I just showed you. And by the way, we're sort of generally moving incrementally up the spectrum and getting harder and harder and harder. A few of these are exchangeable in terms of how difficult they are. They're difficult in different ways, but generally speaking, I'm moving towards the full iteration of the movement. For folks who have just ankle mobility issues and they basically have the strength, they're athletic enough, they can balance, sometimes it's really nice just to elevate the heel slightly. So you can see I've got a little 5-pound plate here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to put my heel on that plate, and I'm going to lower down and do a pistol that way. And it just allows for a little bit more play on the ankle for people who otherwise don't have that ankle mobility. So that's a cool way of doing it. And then another way to deal with ankle mobility is just to take this 5-pound plate and hold it out in front. So believe it or not, holding it out in front, it takes your center of mass and it moves your center of mass forward just a little bit. So rather than being dumped back into the heel too far and so far that you're going to fall, the weight can actually help keep us forward. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to hold the plate out in front. You can use a torpedo if you wanted. I'm going to lower down. I'm going to let this thing kind of be my steering wheel, and then I'll stand back tall, holding that up in front of me. And even though it's a little bit more stressful on the shoulders, it allows us to get a little closer to the pistol. And last but not least would be the actual pistol itself, which I already showed you at the beginning. So I've given you a bunch of options. It is very, very important that you choose one or two, all right? Choose one or two. Don't come in with 5 to 10 to show at the chalkboard. Choose one or two to show at the chalkboard, meaning shim with an air squat, guaranteed. Give them one scaling option at the chalkboard that is, a third of the way up the spectrum, one that's 2/3 of the way up the spectrum, then show them the full iteration of the pistol, all right? Make sure you articulate that any of them are good options, that people can pick and choose, that you are going to build up to the whole thing, but people have the option to find what works best for them. And then make sure you have a few of these up your sleeve as little options that you can use on an individual basis for people who need something a little bit more custom in their experience. But don't ruin your chalkboard by teaching 7 pistol shims, knowing that no one's going to be able to remember or follow along anyway. They're not going to be able to choose. So choose one or two, start with that. This is the elephant in the room. It's a tough movement. It's tricky. Let's try it. I think the pistol is it really essentially just yoga, right? I mean, it's controlling your body through space, under tension. It's big motion in the hip, the knee, and the ankle. This is yoga. So people don't seem to be upset when we do things like Warrior 3 to standing splits and really challenging postures. Frame it that way. Frame it as just a dynamic posture that requires a lot of mobility and a lot of strength. And just like our yoga, we can always find an option that is appropriate for people. So have fun with pistols, put a positive spin on it, and it's going to be an awesome class. Thank you.